Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Tunnel Vision, a show brought to you by USCFootball.com. I'm your host, Keely Eure, joined by Shotgun Spratling and Ryan Abraham. We have a fun show for you guys today. It's also marked by some breaking news that happened about an hour or two ago. Matt Fink, the senior quarterback, announced that he's going to enter the transfer portal. ESPN's Kyle Bonagura was first to report that. He actually released an interview with Fink. Now, Fink says he's not fully committed to leaving, but he is going to put his name in the transfer portal. So we'll be talking about that. That's interesting news, not one that we really expected right now, especially. So we'll get into that. We'll be talking about USC's 2019 spring camp as a whole. What did the Trojans improve on? What did they not improve on? What did we think about their new coaching staff, et cetera, et cetera? We'll talk about starting quarterbacks. What does this mean now that Fink's potentially gone? Not sure. But as always, we love hearing from you guys, your comments, questions, concerns. You can get a hold of us pretty much any way you want to. You can tweet at us, put hashtag TunnelVision. I will see it and put it up on the show. You can comment on all three streaming platforms, YouTube, Facebook, and Periscope. Or if you really want to get in touch with us, you can call us on our hotline, 5124-TUNNEL. Chris Trevino is screening calls. We can talk to you guys in person. That's always fun. We appreciate your calls.
Do that. We love the calls.
Yeah, Ryan, this guy especially, Ryan, he loves those calls. But yeah, we have a fun show for you guys today. Guys, let's start off with the breaking news. Matt Fink has put his name into the transfer portal. He talked to Clay Helton and Graham Harrell. They obviously let him know where he stands. Doesn't sound like it was good for him and what he thinks where he should be, and thus he made the move for the transfer portal. What are you guys taking away from this new development?
Yeah, I mean, for him, I think it makes sense. He's a guy, the people that I've talked to close to him, he wants to play. You know, he's a player that wants to play because he will be graduating this summer. He's going to have 2 years to go. And I think we've seen a lot of people in the transfer portal that's pretty full. There's not a lot of spots out there. But for a quarterback who's got a little bit of experience, you know, he was Sam Darnold's backup. He was JT Daniels' backup. I think there's going to be a spot for him somewhere. So we'll see where he kind of ends up. You know, he didn't rule out, coming back. We thought he looked pretty good in the spring. You know, you talked to some of the writers. Some people felt he was maybe the second best quarterback out there at times. So we've seen all those guys play a little bit. Obviously, the meeting that with Graham Harrell and Clay Helton, if he was number 2, he's probably not transferring. Yeah. So we're guessing he's 3 or 4. Keaton Slovis looked pretty good, the incoming freshman coming in. So, you know, he's a really nice kid. I think he's a really good athlete. He's done everything that was asked of him, and he would have had a chance to start if he didn't get hurt in the Arizona State game. He was ahead of Jack Sears there. So there was some opportunities there. It just really didn't work out for him. We were able to confirm, Kyle Bonagura was the one that, like Keely said, put it out there first. It's a good thing with 24/7 Sports, we do have hooks into the transfer portal, so we have a lot of that information out there. I was able to confirm his name is actually in there and stuff. So doesn't mean he's gone, but once you're in there, it's usually a pretty good sign. We saw Greg Johnson come out of there, but it's interesting for him. It's hard to keep a whole lot of quarterbacks on your roster these days in college football. So the 3-star kid out of Glendora High School looks like he's going to be moving on, Shotgun.
Yeah, he's going to take a gander, see what's available out there, see what opportunities present themselves, and then decide whether or not he wants to come back. And from the sounds of it, I would guess that he's gotten the okay from the coaches to do that because the coaches have after a certain amount of days, coaches can remove you from a roster if you enter yourself into the transfer portal. So it sounds like he's been given the opportunity to go out and see what's available out there, see if there's an opportunity to start somewhere, which is what he said. He wants to go somewhere. He wants to play. So giving him an opportunity to go out there. And, hey, if the right opportunity is not out there, then maybe he comes back and gives USC a little bit more depth at the quarterback position. And, yeah, like you said, it's unfortunate for him. He got injured in that Utah game, or else he would have been starting that Arizona State game instead of Jack Sears. And then who knows from what would have happened from there. If that would have pushed him up higher or pushed him down lower, who knows if he would have had that opportunity and how things would have turned out. As to whether or not it would have had any effect this spring, I don't know, just because of new coordinator, new offense and stuff. So it's hard to know exactly what would have happened, if one thing changes here or there, and that's kind of the law of sports. If one thing's different, you never know what would have happened. If Wally Pipp didn't need that day off, maybe Lou Gehrig didn't become the great that he is. Who knows?
You don't know, and I think we saw last spring where both Matt Fink and Jack Sears didn't look very good, once Sam Darnold had left. But I thought he got better. I thought he got better over the summer. I thought he got better in the fall. When you saw him in games, I thought he did pretty well. And then even this spring, he was out there competing. And I think he was, there was days where he was like the best guy. So I feel like he's improved, which is, good for him. Like if you get into college and you're getting better, and I think the coaching got better this spring with Graham Harrell coming in. But I think that's a good sign. And, it's something for a team to look at. I think there are some teams that would definitely take a flyer on Matt Fink.
If you remember the Stanford game, the offense was at its best when he was in there.
Yeah.
And, that was a game where they struggled mightily offensively. But they ran the ball with him. He threw a couple short passes. Stanford made some adjustments the second drive he was in there before JT Daniels came back. But, they drove the ball down the field and had an opportunity there to put points on the board with him at quarterback. So that shows you a little bit about his ability. That he can go up against a defense like Stanford early in the season and gets thrown in there, and he makes some plays happen. He can make some plays with his legs. The question mark is the consistency throwing the ball. And, Graham Harrell talked about, he's an emotional guy, keeping his emotions in check to an extent when he's on the field and, being a leader and stuff like that. So, there's an opportunity there for a team to pick him up and, have him potentially lead their team. But it's going to be, it's hard to say where he will be available, like where is a good spot for him to land right now. Someone joked on the YouTube chat, I think it was a joke, but he'll probably end up in Illinois.
Yeah, I have some information about that. Well, so contacting the people at Illinois, because there was some question, too. So if you don't know, Trayvon Sidney and Olawale Betiku or Betiku. What do you say?
Betiku.
I say Betiku, but then some people say Betiku. I think he said it in one of his videos. But anyway, Wale and Trayvon Sidney are both transferring to Illinois. We have that in the 24/7 Sports transfer portal there. So there was some question about, there's someone asked about Keely Ross. So Keely Ross was contacted by Illinois also, but he is not interested in going there for whatever reason. And also with Matt Fink, I think Illinois would take a quarterback, but what I was told, it would be more of a Khalil Tate kind of guy that wants to come in. They would look at it, but not necessarily someone that wasn't a full-time starter. So I don't think that would be a perfect fit, at least from what I was told from the Illinois people, that they weren't going to bring in someone that wasn't like a regular starter.
Yeah. Now, if you're just coming in late to the stream, we're talking about Matt Fink. Matt Fink announced pretty much an hour or two ago that he is intending to put his name in the transfer portal. I believe we confirmed he is in the transfer portal. He did tell ESPN's Kyle Bonagor that it's not final, but he's definitely going to put his name out there and see what that means for him. But, I mean, now that has been disclosed, what can we glean from the quarterback depth chart right now? If Fink is not happy where he stands, that must mean that JT and Sears are 1-2 in some order, correct?
Would think so. And we did a couple, if you haven't been listening to the Peristyle podcast, if you like watching this, you probably would like listening to our podcast. If you don't already, you can go to peristylepodcast.com, or we put them up on uscfootball.com. Former UNLV head coach Harvey Hyde, who coached Randall Cunningham, if you remember that name, when he was in college. He came out and said he thinks if they had a game tomorrow, Jack Sears would be the quarterback. Now, for everyone, pretty much everyone else at uscfootball.com, we've all picked JT Daniels. That would be that, we felt that he won the spring, and with all the different factors coming in, starting last year and things like that. But there's a lot of people that are behind Jack Sears, and they want to see him start, and a lot of people, with JT Daniels. I think it's pretty clear when you have an incoming freshman coming in. It's great that he's done well. I think it shows that the system isn't as hard to learn as a lot of the other ones are. So you could Keaton Slovis coming in and actually competing. I think that's a good sign. But it's more a testament of what the system is. I wouldn't say it's a knock on JT Daniels or Jack Sears. I would still think it's a JT Daniels and Jack Sears race, with JT Daniels most likely winning this one. But there are definitely some people that are in the Jack Sears camp, and they think he's a more athletic guy, and they want to see him. And it's amazing to me that people that have never watched practice, they've seen Jack Sears in one game, either side, just to say they plant their flag and just be like, it has to be Sears. That's the only decision, or JT Daniels is the only way. Like, how could you know? Like, I don't know how, we're out there all the time looking at those guys, and we have our opinions, but at least it's based on watching what they're doing. There's some people that's never seen anything, and they're like, nope, it has to be this, and I know I'm right. You know what I mean?
It just seems strange that people can make such a quick judgment, but that's part of being a fan.
Yeah.
That you see one at bat, you see one throw, you see one shot, you're like, I like that guy. I like that guy. I don't know what it is, but I like that guy. There's something in the form. There's something. And he made plays in that Arizona State game, which makes it easy to say that's a guy that should be. Now, Arizona State defense is not that great. They did not win that game. I don't think you would put that on Jack Sears, though. He made some throws. He made some good runs. Once he settled down, he really struggled early in the game just because I think he had the jitters. But I think that he has an opportunity that his potential is there. He's going to continue to get better, But I don't think right now that he's the guy that was the best in the spring. I don't think he was the guy that was second best in the spring.
Yeah.
He was third or fourth in my opinion. Now he had he ended the spring camp great. His Saturday, the last final practice might have been the best practice by a quarterback. Now that partly is he got a deep ball, a 70-yard touchdown to Tyler Vaughns on a play that I think Keely said it was Dominic Davis that slipped. I didn't see the DB.
Yeah.
But he had a couple other plays. He threw one up that Devin Williams should have caught for touchdown, but it was kind of affected throw. And then the next play, he throws it to Devin Williams, but that was over a walk-on. So there were some really positive things late in the camp, but there's also, you have to look at it and realize that there's some things that played into that. Now, he has to be more consistent. That's the thing with Jack Sears. For Jack Sears to take over as a starting quarterback.
Some highs and some lows, yeah.
So he's the guy, he's the gambler, basically. If you start him or you play him, it's you're going to get it's a risk reward. It's kind of like Sam Darnold to an extent. You knew Sam Darnold. After Sam Darnold's, Rose Bowl season, I said there were a lot of throws there that tipped off a guy's hands or something, off a defender's hands, or, a guy dropped. There were just sometimes when a defender would drop a ball. You're like, wow, that would be an interception. It seemed like his luck changed the next season, where it was like, wow.
Those tip balls ended up being intercepted, yeah.
And sometimes it was a ball tipped to the line of scrimmage or something, like it's not a quarterback's fault, whereas the year before it was like he was getting away with some mistakes and it wasn't hurting him. In the second year, those mistakes seemed to come. And that becomes the question, like, do you want all your mistakes in 1 year, or do you want to save all of them away from 1 year so you can go to the Rose Bowl and win it, or not? I don't know. But I think that's what you're getting out of Jack Sears is similar. Like, there's risk reward there.
Right.
He's going to make some plays. You just go, wow, that's great. What a throw or what a run. But there's also times like, oh, why'd you do that? Why'd you make that throw? Why'd you try to run?
I think you could argue that you'd rather see Jack Sears last year in like the gumbo offense, where you don't really trust the offensive system as a whole, but if the quarterback can go out there and make plays on his own, it's more hero ball. That's what we saw with the Sam Darnold. Now you have a really good offensive system. I don't think you need as big of a risk taker. I mean, you want someone that can analyze the field quickly and make the right reads and make the right decisions. At some point, JT Daniels, if you listen to Graham Harrell's comments, this past week when he spoke on Tuesday, one of the, I guess, criticisms or coaching that he was talking about with JT Daniels is not over-analyzing everything. Like he's a guy that takes every note in every meeting and wants to know exactly what everyone's doing. And Graham doesn't want that. Graham Harrell wants you to be like, hey, just go out there and play and flow. So I think that's something that JT Daniels might have to dial it back a little bit. But you don't need, in this kind of a system, I don't think you need the hero ball stuff. There's opportunities to make big plays like that. But there just wasn't really – you never felt confident the system was going to get guys open. In this system, if you just go through the progression, there's going to be someone – 1, 2, 3. One of those guys is most likely going to be open the way the route trees and all that kind of stuff. It just wasn't designed that way before. And people were confused. They didn't really know where to go. Now I think everyone's going to be on the same page. So I think it would have helped Jack Sears to be that hero guy in the old offense. I'm not sure it's going to be as big of a difference in this new one.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that the – style of offense they had previously fits more of a guy that can make plays out of nothing.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, Graham Harrell's not asking guys to do that.
Real quick, I just I'm sorry, Keely. I know
You're good.
that. So the 24/7 Sports, if you just Google 24/7 Sports NCAA Transfer Portal, it'll show up. You can go to USC to see all the USC people, and USC has a lot of activity in there. But Matt Fink is now listed in there, so he's in there. It's transfer. He should be immediately eligible. They don't have that listed yet. And they've updated Trayvon Sidney and Oluwale Betiku. Why am I saying the wrong one? Both going to Illinois. But you can see, like, there's 2 quarterbacks, 4 receivers, 2 linebackers, and 3 defensive backs. And that doesn't even include Brew McCoy, who went into the portal. And so it's really 5 receivers that are in there right now. So the only ones that we don't know, they have Holden Thomas in there, who is a walk-on, but Josh Mentor-Baby, not sure where he's going. Velus Jones, not sure with him. And Keely Ross is the other one, too. So there's still a few guys that you're not sure of. Don't expect the Keely Ross back. I think the only one that has a real chance of returning is Velus Jones.
Really?
Yeah, I would think so. Like, I think there's a shot for him. He went to visit Tennessee last weekend, I believe it was. T. Martin, his old position coach, is now there, so there's something with that. I don't think Josh Imatorbhebhe is going to be coming back, but that's just my gut feeling. But it's a really great. So basically, the transfer portal, you have access to it if you are a coach. So all the coaches in the country can go in and see who's in there. There's several reporters in 24/7 Sports that have access through a coach, so we can keep the database updated by basically looking at what the coaches are looking at. So it's a really cool feature, and you can check it out on USCfootball.com.
LDR on YouTube brought up a good point. He said another 2016 guy leaving USC. That class is pretty much cursed for guys that have stayed there.
I'm actually writing a story about that. There's been some people that have referenced it, but yeah, it's pretty amazing. We talked about that on the Harvey Hyde podcast this week, and it is devastating the amount of people from that class. So this is it's good for the story, but just another one in the story that I'm going to put up. But it was a good class when it came in, but there's just so many people that are gone now.
Yeah. Now we actually have a live caller.
Yes,
we have a caller, Greg from San Francisco. Let's get him on the line. Hello, Greg. You were talking live on Tunnel Vision.
Hey, guys. Thanks, everyone, for fielding my call. And I just want to say thank you so much for your Tunnel Vision.
Thanks for calling in, Greg.
Trojan alumni. You got it. And I'm a Trojan alumni, and I've got a incoming freshman, so excited for him to experience the whole fight on. Yeah. So my question is, following the program for a few years, one name that sort of jumps to mind is Mitch Mustaine and his experience at USC. How would you compare or contrast the situation with Matt Fink and Mitch Mustaine?
Interesting. Hopefully, your bank account's doing okay. I don't know what you had to pay to get your son or daughter into USC.
How did I know you were going to make that joke?
I knew too.
It's a softball. Sorry, Greg. We're just kidding. I'm sure he or she under their own merit, but it's good. It's different because Mitch Mustaine was a transfer and Matt Fink came in as a true freshman. Matt Fink was also sort of a afterthought prospect, recruit coming in, and that Clay Helton kept on. I think a lot of people were advising Clay Helton, hey, go get a different quarterback. So I think the situations are different in that aspect. Mitch Mustaine was a much bigger name coming out of high school, and then he was a bigger name as a transfer. So I would say Matt Fink was more of an under the radar guy that sort of got better, and not sort of, he did get better throughout his time at USC. I don't know if you have any.
I mean, I didn't see too much of Mitch Mustaine. I mean, I know he was a highly rated guy coming out of, going to Arkansas. He comes to USC, and it was kind of a surprise that he didn't win that battle. Just because he had started as a freshman at Arkansas in the SEC. He produced a little bit for Arkansas and had some really good games. So he came to USC, and the thought was, okay, he's going to take over there, and then it never happened. He started the Notre Dame game when it rained, I believe, and he struggled in that game. He missed some throws, but also Ronald Johnson
he
drops the
dropped
ball
that
late.
Deep ball,
That would have won the game, and maybe that changes the thought about Mitch Mustaine. But I just don't think he ever lived up to the potential. Whereas I don't think Matt Fink was as highly regarded when he got to USC. So I think that there was less expectations for him. So I think he's a little bit different in that regards. But Mitch Mustaine did eventually get his opportunity at the end of his career, and that was only 1 or 2 games. I think that was that Barkley got injured.
I think it was, yeah.
So and Fink would have had his opportunity against Arizona State at least to start one game, but he got injured in the game as well. So unfortunately for him, he never got that opportunity, or has not got that opportunity at least. He has not left yet. He's just in the portal. So, but I think there's some differences there just because Mustaine more highly regarded and did get an opportunity, whereas Fink has not.
Yeah, just a little side note, Greg, our old version of the Tunnel Vision, before we became Tunnel Vision, we were doing live shows on was it Ustream? I think we were doing it on, and I had Mitch Mustaine. He was a guest, and we had him at Traditions, like in the Traddy's, yeah, down, in the basement or whatever of the student. Was it the student union or something like that? Or yeah. So we were down there, and I think there was like a band playing at the thing next door, like some ska band or something. So we're in this booth trying to talk and like right next to each other, and there was just like this band playing in the background. But we had them on the live show there. They brought us in like a hard line for the internet to do the show and everything. So we did it probably like a year and a half or something. We did that there.
Wow.
It was cool.
Cool. Well, thanks, Greg, for the call. We appreciate it. We actually have another caller on the line, so I'm going to go to him. It's another guy from San Francisco, John from San Francisco. Hello, John. You're on live with television.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking the call. I appreciate it.
Of course.
So my question is with the simplified offense, how is that going to affect the defense and the exotic looks that they're going to be seeing with such a simplified offense during all the practices?
I think it's interesting. Clancy Pendergast was grateful, I guess, to that they were seeing it. Maybe it's just because it was a different offense, but some of the quotes he had from last Thursday's practice. It seemed like it was helping his defense a little bit, if you remember.
Yeah, he was telling Bruce Feldman, that he's been grateful for Graham Harrell because of the pressure it's put on the defense. Now, that's an interesting question. USC is going to face some air raid offenses in the Pac-12, so it's not like it's not like his triple option. It's like we only see this in practice. We never see it during the season. But the previous offense was a mix of everything. So how does it really prepare you for anything? Kind of. Like it's such a wide variety of stuff. Does it really prepare you for anything? Whereas this offense, you're at least going to be prepared definitely for the air raid. And your scout team is going to prepare you for whatever offense you're facing. So I don't know that it really hurts you necessarily that you're going against an air raid in practice. The bigger thing for the defense and being affected by the air raid offense of Graham Harrell is that I think they're going to have more time to rest.
Yeah.
Because the offense is going to move the ball more consistently and not be 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out like they did sometimes last year during the season where there were stretches where they just could not move the ball at all.
Right.
I think now they're at least going to be able to move the ball some, even if they are not as if they're not scoring every single drive or anything like that.
Yeah, and even when they scored, they might score in one big play, so they were not getting a lot of rest either. So yeah, I think that will help. And people talk about the simplification of the offense. I think they try to make it simple for the players, but they're going to use motions and different formations and stuff where it's not going to look like you run 4 plays. Like, oh, that's play 1, 2, 3, or 4. So it's going to look different than that. So you don't want to confuse it. It's just very simple for defenses to read either. It's more about the execution that they want to make sure whatever play they run it well. And like we said, I think we said this like last week, they'll modify a play where on this play the running back might run a wheel route and it completely changes the look the defense is going to give. Or if he stays in a blocks or goes to the flat the other side, you can change little things like that. It's still the same play, but you make it look different. I think Norm Chow, we talked about that before. Norm Chow loved to make things simple for the players on his squad and then try to make it look as different and complex for the defense.
Yeah, you got to give them a lot of eye candy. It's all about the eye candy.
All about the eye candy. Thank you, John, for the question and the call. We appreciate you and everyone who's calling. Moving on to overall spring, and we'll get back to the quarterbacks, I'm sure. But overall, 5 weeks of USC spring camp. What did you guys think about how USC approached it, what they did, what they were able to accomplish in those 15 practices?
At the risk of getting rocks thrown at us, everyone was I think there were some positive developments from spring football. Like, oh, you needed to change some things, and you did. Like, oh, instead of having a meeting about the penalties, why don't we bring out officials to every practice? Like, I think something like that seems small, but it'll pay dividends. Every time when you see USC lose a game and we go back to go, they didn't do this, they didn't do that. That's one of those things where, they haven't done that. Well, they did it. So if they have a bunch of penalties now, you're like, well, at least they tried. There's something else that needs to be addressed, but at least they did something different. Obviously, the offensive scheme is a really big deal. It just wasn't up to snuff. I don't know what it was. It was sort of a mishmash mix of stuff from when, Lane Kiffin was around and Steve Sarkisian and Clay Helton and T. Martin and probably some Tyson Helton and some all that stuff. Like all of it was kind of just put together where it wasn't anything certain. And I think now you have something that's like very defined. And if it doesn't work, you know exactly why. You're not going to well, was he calling the plays? You're not going to have any of that anymore. Yeah. So I think there was a lot of positive developments that came out of spring. There's some things you just can't know because most of the secondary isn't around yet and they're hurt and things like that. But, do you feel good about the wide receivers in the system? Yeah, I think. Do you feel good that the running backs are going to do well? Not really sure about the offensive line. We'll see with that. I feel, you feel pretty good about the front seven and what the defense decided to do, and you feel good about the punter. So I feel like there's some positives, but whenever we say that, Shotgun, people get mad.
Freak out. I know that you're not supposed to be, after you go 5-7 at USC, you're not supposed to have any positives. But There were this spring. There were. The offense, you're encouraged by it at least. And you're encouraged by what Graham Harrell was able to do with that offense in one spring. You wonder, new offense coordinator coming in, how much change can you impact in 6 weeks of practice, 5 weeks of practice during 6 weeks of time. And I just thought that they looked much better as the spring progressed. It looked like this offense is going to be able to make some things happen. I know it's going against the defense, and there's some holes in the defense right now with the DBs and different things, but it just looked like they, and the players are talking about playing with confidence, and I think that's what's going on. You're just seeing guys are playing with more confidence. They're excited about this offense going forward. So I think there's positives there. I think the defensive line looked really good. There's you're encouraged by Brandon Keely making more plays. Brandon Keely being a guy that Clay Helton singled out as we told him he had to improve, and he showed it this spring. Jay Tufele had a really good spring.
Yeah.
There's some questions, and you're kind of wondering what are you doing with the linebackers? What exactly are you doing there?
Yeah.
With Jordan Asafa and John Houston playing the same position, what's going to go on in the secondary with how thin they were there? How much of an infusion can the new guys bring in during the fall? No one's really taken over those cornerbacks. There's some questions, definitely.
Do the outside linebackers exist? Like, was it? We don't know if that's still a position anymore.
I mean, they got a coach, so
yeah, you would think there's one there.
But so there's definitely some question marks. However, I think you got to be that you come away with some positives. And the new coaching staff, the guys that came in, the Chad Kays, the Mike Jinks, the guys that are in the right position now, Tim Drevno and Kerry Colbert, instead of Tim Drevno being a running back coach for the first time in like 22 years or something. I don't know what the next one number was, but it'd been a long time since
there were out of place coaches.
Yeah,
I mean, so Drevno's back to the offensive line, Colbert's back to wide receivers. I think the defensive line, you saw these guys, lose some weight, which that's a different philosophy when Chad Kay comes in and. He's an experienced defensive line coach coming in. I think you're going to have better coaching, more technique in the secondary with Greg Burns. So I think there was a lot of improvements. I think the biggest one is obviously Graham Harrell, but there's a lot of other small improvements. Now, it didn't fix everything, so don't say, hey, they're going to go 12-0 now. No, I think they could have done more, but it's probably after watching spring, I feel better than I did going into it where, I think they made some more, maybe even more positive changes than I anticipated going into it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you guys. I think the comment I made a lot during the offseason was that in 2018, it didn't seem like they were realistic and honest with themselves and honest in making corrections or making tangible corrections. And I think that was actually done to a certain extent in spring. Instead of having a meeting and labeling different kinds of penalties, you just bring in refs. You bring in refs and you cut down the penalties and you increase the discipline that happens. And some people made fun of Clay Helton for making that a priority of his focus as a head coach. But I think that it paid off to a certain extent. Not really having a scheme offensive scheme that put your players in a chance to succeed. They brought in someone who knows his scheme, knows how to run it, and they let him run it. That's a positive step forward. So I think they addressed things that were major glaring errors as far as approaching it head on instead of kind of giving it we tried and here's our weird way of addressing it. There was actual practical, tangible ways to address it. And I think so far they've done a good job. Like, not Helton, you're Shotgun. Like Shotgun said, there are some question marks, the offensive line. There's not a lot of depth. Once you go to the second team, it's a little questionable. The depth on the DBs, the cornerbacks specifically, it's just... Right now, you don't know, especially when a team is going against each other as much as they have. Once it comes to game one, you'll kind of see where that stands. But I think overall, it's a positive step forward. The physicality was stepped up. I think, like Shotgun said, Saturday's practice was one of the best practices we've seen from USC in a long time. I guess that begs the question, should that happen a little bit more? Sprinkle in those practices a little bit more. But I think the coaching staff is an upgrade. I like what they are expecting from their players. Coach Chad Kay and Johnny Nansen were just on the front seven during that practice and expecting a lot from them. And I think we saw a level of intensity rise from that. So if they could have replicated Saturday's last practice and sprinkled more of those intense full pads, full tackling practices into spring, I think it'd be a really good sign for USC. But all things considered, I think it's a good step forward.
Yeah, and I think what you were saying at the beginning about, they really did go in and make some changes. Would they have if it was 5-7? With the more realistic, like you said, it was a realistic viewpoint from Clay Helton, which is sort of like a slap in the face. Like 5-7 is 5-7. Like that's fireable at USC, like you've said many times. you don't really get a lot of second opportunities when you go 5-7. He did, and decided to make a bunch of changes. If it was 7-5, I mean, we felt that there was a lot of issues when they won 10 and 11 games, but they weren't going to be addressed because you could say, "Oh, you won 10 or 11 games." Yeah. If it was 7-5, I don't know if they would have made as many changes as they did.
I mean, we said it before. Like, when you're struggling, you got to make some kind of changes, and that just wasn't the case. I mean, it took the Arizona State game 2 years ago for Chris Hawkins to go into Clay Helton's office and say, "Hey, we got to change something," and it took a captain to do that. And they added music, and that wasn't a huge change, but it was something different. Yeah. And sometimes it just needs something small to make some little adjustments and go with it. I've said before, one of the things I was most impressed with Steve Sarkisian during his time at USC is when he said there was an issue with something, they addressed it and got much better at that one issue. The next week, hey, we got to stop the run better between these two gaps or whatever. They would address that. Right. And the next week, they might give up something else, but they were going to stop that, and they were hyper-focused on it. And I think that's something that hasn't been the case with Clay Helton. He'll just say, we talked about it in a meeting. We'll have to watch the tape on that. But where have the adjustments been? They haven't been there. This spring, they made the adjustments, and the things that they worked on looked much more positive. I mean, they, correcting the penalties and doing different things like that. That was something they hyper-focused on, with bringing refs in and spending the money to do that. Now they looked better on that. Now it's different when you're going against an opponent. We'll see what it looks like in fall, but they were, you weren't seeing the same grabbing. You weren't seeing, they weren't calling holding calls and stuff like that by the refs. And the players got the opportunity to discuss with the refs, like, why is that a penalty? Why is this not? Those type of things. So I think it was a real positive there for the team and the players to be able to have that opportunity with the referees. I think that was a huge thing for them. And hopefully you'll see that pay dividends in the future. We'll see in the fall. You never know until you get in the games, but you got to. It looks positive. It's encouraging, at least.
Yeah.
To your point, Ryan, I think the Cotton Bowl and what happened afterwards is a perfect example that if that kind of happened again in 2018, nothing would really happen, because that offensive line performance was awful.
Yeah.
And Neil Callaway returned for that year, and then you have Tim Drevno in this weird running back position, even though he's only been a running back coach for the first year of his coaching career. It's just things like that were just like, you are not being honest with what this team needs and the changes that it needs to make, and you're not making the hard decisions. A 5-7 season forces your hand. You have to make those hard decisions. So I think that goes to your question.
Yeah, I think if you see the examples of this all the time. Like if you're the CEO of some business and you make your numbers for the quarter, but the underlying thing, well, there was these kind of weird things that happened and these orders came in that don't really should count, but next quarter it's not going to be as good, but hey, we made our numbers this quarter, and you're just going to keep going forward like everything's fine, and that's what it felt like they did that after that year. Like, you've got you won the Pac-12, you won 11 games, you went to the Cotton Bowl, but the good teams you played, you didn't look good against. You got some lucky wins in there. Some changes needed to be made. Yes, you could sit on the result, but you knew there was some. It was sort of like a shadow result. You knew that there was going to be some issues with that, and they didn't address it. 5-7, you don't really have a choice. You either gone or you have to address it.
Yeah.
I'm just baffled that you made an analogy that was not a food analogy.
Wow, good point.
I don't always do food analogies. Yes,
that's true.
I like analogies.
Shall we get into some questions?
Let's do it.
Jasper Smith on YouTube says, question, if Sears doesn't get the nod and doesn't play, what is the chance of him transferring next?
Is Jasper one of our new listeners? Has he been?
Is he not? I've never heard his name before.
Yeah. Well, I think it's possible at this point still.
I think it's a similar situation. I think he would try to get to the graduation point so that he could transfer. I mean, he's basically a year away from that.
Yeah.
So unless he transfers right now, that the only advantage for a player in the same spot as Jack Sears, if he's named the backup or he's named third string, is for him to transfer somewhere and be able to sit and learn the playbook somewhere else.
Yeah.
That would be the only advantage, because he's not going to be able to play. Whereas if he waits out this season, and if he's listed as the backup now and something happens to JT Daniels, he goes in, or if he battles in the fall and takes over that position, he's got a much better chance of playing this year. And I mean, you would not take away that opportunity, I don't think.
Right.
Since he has an opportunity to play this year, you wouldn't transfer and then just sit unless there's something more than just the not playing.
Right.
Unless, if you're not liking something, that might be the difference maker. But otherwise, you're going to have the same opportunity to play next year in 2020, whether he leaves now or leaves next year.
Yeah, I think you're right. Logically, his best option is to stay at USC because even if he's not the starter, JT Daniels could get hurt. He could struggle in the offense, and you win the job over at some point during the season. All that stuff is possible, but it can be an emotional decision sometimes. And if you really were set on, hey, I think I was the best, and say he had like some of his friends on the team telling him, hey, you were the best quarterback out there, you should be the starter. This is bull. Then you could see him maybe doing a transfer thing there. But my gut is now that one of them's gone, you're not going to see Jack Sears gone as well. But we've seen
now that one of them is in the transfer portal.
Yeah.
He's not gone yet.
He's gone.
Transfer portal.
He gone.
Ryan Abraham. Sticking on the quarterback topic, Mark on YouTube says, "What has Keaton Slovis done in practices that's made an impression on you guys?"
Arm strength. I mean, the arm strength didn't know that it was there. So the fact that he can throw the out routes and stuff and get it there before a DB can break. Now, those are timing things that Graham Harrell has told him. You can't make that throw. You can't make, and then he gets picked off, and he said it was good for him to see that, so he knows that he's not supposed to be making that throw normally. But the arm strength is better than expected. I think that he can drive the ball more than maybe Fink or Sears. I think I was just surprised that he had that arm strength. It's not. I don't think he necessarily showed that at USC's camp last year when we all saw him there. I don't know. Keely saw him during the season. I was at a different game, but Keely saw him. I don't know if he necessarily showed the same arm strength there. Keely, maybe you can answer that.
Not necessarily. I think it definitely developed more so. You saw more so. And granted, that was a game, and it was a pretty ugly game that I saw. So 15 practices, I see more of him. So I didn't really see that much that we saw in the 15 practices.
Yeah, but I think that's been the most surprising thing is the fact that he can drive the ball when need be.
Yeah. It helped Kurt Warner as your coach. That's not a bad thing.
True. Very true.
And I think it shows, like I said earlier, that the system is not meant for, it takes 3 years to learn. Like we've seen college coaches where the third year in the system, you're going to really know. It's like, that takes too long. Like you can't do that. Like, especially with guys transferring and stuff all the time. You want a mobile program. You're going to be a high mobility position like quarterback. You want to make sure a quarterback comes in and it's not going to take him forever to learn because you might get a guy for 1 year for a transfer, So I think that's a good thing that he picked it up quickly.
Mm-hmm. We actually have a caller on the line, so I'm going to go to that.
We like callers.
It's our buddy Brandon from Wisconsin.
Yes, Brandon.
Hi, Brandon. You're live on television. What's your question for the team?
How's it going? So my question is, first off, I've been on the hate train with Clay Helton, but I've actually been satisfied with the stuff that he's been saying in his press conferences and all. But my question is, what's the most impressive thing you've seen from the spring, and what's the least impressive thing you've seen from the spring practices?
Ooh.
Interesting. Good question.
I'm going to go with most impressive. I'm going to go with Drake Jackson. I think he's a guy that's ready to play as a freshman, play from day one. The fact that he's drawing comparisons from Leonard Williams, and I'm trying to think of the defensive lineman or outside linebacker that Clancy had at Cal, who's also in there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But multiple NFL players he's drawing comparisons to. Also Rasheem Green. I mean, all those guys. And, he's a unique guy that he can play that outside spot or you can move him inside as well. And the fact that he's already making plays, that's been really impressive. He was a guy that USC basically struggled to get at that last moment. It was down him, USC and Arizona State. It was a waffling back and forth. He was supposed to make the announcement on TV. Greg Biggins, was on live television. And Greg Biggins, he texted Greg Biggins and said, "Okay, I'm ready to make my decision." At the very end, he's like, "We can't run it now. It's too late. You've waited too long in the show." But he was supposed to have announced it beforehand, let them know, what it was supposed to be, and just kept on waiting and waiting. So that tells you how, last minute the decision was, and it finally came down to USC, and the fact that he's come in and already making plays, it tells you there is a difference maker in this class when that was a question mark we had.
Yeah.
Is there an instant impact guy? And I think he's come in and shown that. The least, I don't know. I'll let you guys answer what's yours as well.
Yeah, that just a specific play would be his one-handed pick six. And seeing, so we're, and we don't usually have a good view of a lot of stuff. Like the Dominic Davis scoop and score, whatever it was earlier in the scrimmage, was way on the other side of the field. We were in the small pen. We couldn't see it on Cromwell, but we were basically in a spot where we could see Drake Jackson was right in front of us, so you got a really good view of it. And his whole family was kind of right behind us in the stands, and they had like number 99 T-shirts on and stuff. And I remember seeing them coming in, and so I was like kind of going back and forth and watching them watch him, and that was pretty cool to see that. But just and one, this is weird because I don't want to talk about special teams, but seeing Ben Griffiths punt the ball is pretty freaking impressive too. Like that's just
that was impressive.
There's some pretty cool stuff coming off of his leg.
Yeah, I'm gonna say just to go different, maybe Graham Harrell coming in and being so sure and confident in his scheme and talking to him, you just walk away impressed with what he wants from his quarterbacks, what he wants going forward. So compared to the offenses that we've seen from USC before, talking to Graham Harrell, that was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But I would go with Drake Jackson or Ben Griffiths before that.
Least impressive?
Well, real quick with the Graham Harrell stuff. Maybe the first day of practice when he went up on top of
that was
Dado
pretty
Field,
cool.
and I was like, "What the heck is he doing up
Who
there?"
pointed that out to you, Ryan?
I think I let you know, Keely, that he was up there.
No, I
was
didn't.
it?
I can't be the referee.
Oh, you were
in
there
this.
for that
Oh
one.
yeah, you're getting married.
But that was pretty like,
true.
oh, look at that. Like that, you kind of knew, like, oh, this is going to be different.
So now we go least impressive. I'm going to go with the drop off from first to second string offensive line.
I was gonna say that too.
Really?
Copycat.
No. I'm gonna try and go different now. Least impressive.
Got anything, Ryan?
I had a hard time with this. I mean, but even in like the spring scrimmage when all those tackles were out, I thought Frank Martin and Liam Jimmons coming in, they wasn't like terrible.
I thought it was interesting how you could plug and play there.
Yeah.
And the offense allows you to do that, whereas in previous offense, you'd have a 9-step drop or something. It'd be a 27-step drop, and suddenly quarterbacks, Frank Martin and Liam Jimmons, who's been there for 3 weeks, is suddenly having to stop a guy like Drake Jackson or another guy coming off the edge, and you're like, that's not ideal.
Yeah.
But with this offense, quick passes and stuff that you can plug those guys in, and you have an injury, you can hold up. I think that's what it showed us in that moment. But I think there's a big discrepancy between first and second string.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say in general the USC secondary, but it's not really their fault. Maybe Talanoa Hufanga, re-breaking his collarbone. Maybe that's the most. It's not. I mean, I guess if you want to say disappointing thing, it's not like that's something that was a terrible development. And even seeing C.J. Pollard have his foot being in a boot, this would have been a perfect time for him. So just sort of the snake bit secondary, I would say, was the one biggest issue I saw from spring. Not saying that's something that USC did bad, but just a series of unfortunate events, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I can't think of anything else. But that's a good call from you, Brandon. Thanks for the question.
Thanks, Brandon.
We appreciate
Is it
your
snowing
calls.
there? I think I follow former USC guy who's a sportscaster in Wisconsin, and Josh. I think it's Josh, and I think there was some snow there and stuff recently. So that's
Interesting.
unfortunate.
It's snowing in
Josh Moser.
Chicago.
Josh Moser, yeah.
Let's go
Did you
to.
know Josh or no?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Former Trojan.
Okay, let's go to some.
You're never a former Trojan. You're just a former USC student. You're a
Whatever.
Trojan for life, shotgun.
Wow, the shade.
That's what the people say.
We're going to go to a question from Johnny on YouTube. He says, can we get more information on the defensive line coach Chad K and what he has brought to the trenches?
We'll leave that for Keely because Keely's talked to him more than anyone there.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Have I?
You
Yeah,
talked to him
think so.
twice, right? Or just once?
Just once?
Oh. Chris is the other one that talked to him.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. But both of them have talked to him. I have not
Yeah.
talked to him. So I'll leave that
okay.
to you.
I mean, I just think he brings a different approach. I think he's more of a friend to the defensive lineman. I think KU was a little bit too much tough love at times where guys would kind of turn off a little bit. And I think Chad K, from what I've heard and seen, he's kind of hit that balance of he's going to be on you and expect things from you, but also he'll come over and talk to you more quietly and be like, hey, that was a good play, blah, blah, blah. I've seen him walk off with players and telling them stuff. I've heard a lot of guys talking about their hands. Drake Jackson said that's something that he carried over as a bad habit into high school, and Chad K has been on him of bursting well with his hands. Footwork he's addressed. And then how much do you guys, this is just a question about Chad K, how much do you think that the UCLA game changed USC's approach for their D-line and D-line coaching?
I think it was a big deal. I mean, you give up 300 yards rushing to some guy from UC Davis or whatever. That's it's going to get your attention. It should have got their attention in the Ohio State game, like Keely talked about. This was UCLA, who was 2-8 at the time. That's a huge slap in the face. There was not a good UCLA team. It was not a team that was going to be power running all over people, and they just power run all over USC. So I think they need to make some changes. In a case like that, I think BKU was a popular coach from some players, not as much for others, but he was an inexperienced coach too. Like when you have a brand new coach in Clay Helton, he shouldn't have hired a brand new defensive line coach. He should have hired an experienced one. So that's sort of like a 3-year-old mistake that was fixed. Now, you don't want to call Kenichi a mistake.
No.
But it's that's probably not the best hire. I think there's some places that he could have been hired at, and it probably shouldn't have been USC because you had an inexperienced coach. He had a lot of inexperienced assistant coaches. So I think now you bring in someone with a little more experience. It's going to just be a different look, a different view, and you kind of wash that bad taste of the UCLA game out of your mouth.
Yeah, and I've talked about it before, but Chad K, I asked him about how much did you know about USC's offensive or defensive lineman before spring camp started. He said he watched the tape, and the first thing that popped out to them was their weight. That's the first thing he addressed them in the offseason is that you guys got to lose weight. You got to be faster. You don't have to be big to be successful. So I thought that was really interesting as well. And he's so passionate about the defensive line. Most coaches are like, okay, I got to go, guys. Like, we'll see ya. And then the SIDs kind of had to tell Chad K, hey, stop talking. You can go now. You can talk to him for a good bit. So that's always fun when you're the guy you're talking to is passionate.
And also telling his charges to beat that ass. As they were running from.
What? No, I think I have the quote right here. What did he say? He said, "Let's continue this ass whooping."
Ass whooping, my
bad. Yeah. So you like the intensity that he brings. Him and Johnny Nansen are an interesting crew that yell at the defensive guys. I think it's needed. That's spice.
You just love saying spice now.
I do. It's a new thing. I'm trying. I can't read questions while I'm answering. So, Shotgun, do you have any questions that you would like to answer right now?
Ricard Hammer really wanted to know how many people are left from you want to know how many people are putting their names in the portal. He's asked it a couple times. There are 11, including Greg Johnson, have gone into the portal. That is Matt Fink, Holden Thomas, Trayvon Sidney, Josh Motorbebe, Randall Grimes, Velus Jones Jr., Levi Jones, Oluwole Batiku Jr., Bubba Bolden, Keely Ross, and Greg Johnson. So there's your 11 guys that are all have been in the portal. So there's one answer for you.
Yeah. Did you include Brew McCoy also?
Brew McCoy technically is not on our page, so I did not include him. But, so technically 12.
Yeah.
One of them has returned. One of them is a walk-on. And there's Velus Jones could return. I know that's been a question, too. Any word on Velus? Nothing new there.
No.
He did take the visit to I think he took an official visit to
Tennessee. I think it was.
So, obviously, T. Martin is there now, so that is a big part of that. He was back in Alabama at one point, I believe. So, nothing new as far as yay or nay, but the fact that he's taking other visits and stuff that tells you a little bit.
Yeah.
We have a Facebook question from Romero, or I think that's how you say it. Sorry if I pronounced it wrong. He says, "How has Marquise Stepp looked in the spring? Can he have a bigger role this season?"
He's been pretty awful. Just
Ryan.
big and out of shape. No, he's great. He's been one of the stars, right? Where did we have him in our 10 of Troy, top 10? Like he was
pretty up there.
He was up there, top 5 or something like that. But just the combination of he was probably 245 last year. They get him down to about 230, so he's still a big running back. But the speed, if you saw the spring game on Pac-12 Network, he had like that 60-yard run down the right sideline, and we've seen a bunch of plays like that with him. I think he showed pretty good hands. I'm not sure on the pass protection stuff as much. I think there's probably some work to do there. But, yeah, I think he's definitely proved that he can do it. And Coach Harvey Hyde on our podcast this week said he would be the number 1 running back for him right now. Availability is very important for him, and he was out there the entire spring. But he was impressive.
I disagree with some of Coach Harvey Hyde's takes
I
on starters.
We got a question about that. James on Facebook said, "What do you guys feel about Sears?" Oops, I just put us off the screen. About Sears as QB1 and Stepp as RB1.
That would not be my choices.
Not my choice either.
Not mine either, but that's what Harvey Hyde was saying. But you could do worse with those guys. But
that's true.
It's not bad. But I think Harvey Hyde liked what he saw from him. He wants more of a physical thing. You have a more physical running back with Stepp.
It's not exactly what fits in his offense.
No,
that's the
exactly.
problem. There.
Yes.
Now the thing about Stepp is he's one of those guys where you look at and you say air raid offense coming in. I don't know if he's going to fit.
Right.
But Mike Jinks said, and he was talking about all of them, but he was like, wow, these guys can really move, and Stepp is part of that. Stepp has done some really nice things, and if he can continue to work on catching the ball at the backfield, that's another component that is a big part of this offense, as checkdowns and as different things, swing passes, which he said before that he'd not do in high school. Now he's being asked to do that, and he's shown pretty good hands.
Yeah.
But it's still something he has to work on and stuff to be the guy on this offense. But the fact that he's been able to keep his weight in check, the fact that he's been running really well in between the tackles and stuff, when he was a guy, you go, okay, if there's a certain setup, if you find 5 guys that you say, okay, if you bring in the air raid offense, this is not going to work with this guy. No, he's been able to fit in, even though he's a bigger guy running the system.
Yeah.
We have a question from Scott on YouTube who says, is there any indication that we're going to be able to run the ball? I don't see throwing 55 passes a game as a winning formula against good teams.
I mean, Clay Helton thinks they're going to run the ball. When he was asked about standouts, he said, which players have stood out? He mentioned the defensive line. They said offensively, I love the passing game, but our backs right now and our offensive line, we're able to physically run the ball and be able to have Vi and Steven and Big Marquise and Quincy and the host of backs. They showed their stuff when given the opportunities in our live drill.
I don't necessarily agree or don't have enough information on the offensive line part of that. I would say I think USC is going to try to run the ball. If you think this is not a 70% pass sort of situation. This is more of a closer to 50-50. I think it was like 52% of the time Graham Harrell was throwing the ball at North Texas. So almost 50-50. You want to see that. I don't think we know coming from the spring, and Shotgun talked about the lack of depth on the offensive line. Can they line up and just kind of push people around and run the football? It might be more of a relying on the passing game. We're not really sure yet. I think the jury's still kind of out on that. But they're not going to abandon the run. They're going to still try to run the ball. I'm just not convinced yet that this is going to be one of the more big, you see a big physical defensive front. Will they be able to push things around? And, if they got a 10-point lead, can they run the football consistently on that? I'm not sure they can do that.
I also think that there's not that many run plays out of this offense, so they didn't work on it as much. I mean, you said that Graham Harrell was it 52% of the time he threw the ball at North Texas?
At least the last year, I believe, yeah.
Michael Pittman was asked, this offense is more like 60%, 60-40, something like that. He's like, he paused for a minute. He's like, I feel like I've seen 90-10 as far as throwing the ball in practice.
This spring, okay, yes.
So I think we didn't really see them fully get into it, and maybe that's because of the depth issues on the offensive line. They wanted to work on getting the passing plays down first, and then when they get more depth, maybe they'll work on run the ball more. I'm not sure what the reasoning is, but you can see that from one player's perspective, he thinks they're throwing the ball even more than that. So that tells you that I think they still got work to do on the run game, and they still are going to do more with the run game. But right now, I don't think it that I would say that the run game is ready right now.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
I think that there's still issues there. They've got to find out if they can move guys around in the right direction. You don't have to push guys around as much in this offense, but can you divert them in the wrong direction so that you can run the ball through the gaps and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. We actually have a Twitter question.
Nice.
From Luke. He says, which players on the roster have you seen grown into a leadership role over spring camp, and what leadership style would you consider them? #FightOn, #Hi Samson and Chrissy.
I've mentioned it a couple times, but Austin Jackson is the first guy that pops into mind because he said after the Notre Dame game that I'm going to become a leader, and he's become a leader. Some of the other players have mentioned him, some of the coaches have mentioned him, so I think he's the first guy that pops into my mind.
Do you think John Houston would fall in that category? I mean, he's been a starter, but I think now that they've kind of moved him to the middle, it seemed like he's still a quiet guy. He's still kind of a shy guy, but I think I talked to him earlier in the spring, and it felt like that was something that he wanted to take on. So I think he could be someone there. I think Michael Pittman is a potential captain for this team, and I think he's not the loudest guy in the world either, but he can say a few things and stuff. So I think
he did start that fight on Saturday.
Yeah, that's a leader.
A little chatty.
That was good.
Yeah.
You guys felt it was the best practice, right? So
he's also an instigator in practice, which I like.
Yeah,
there's a little bit of that.
A little spicy. I think Isaiah Polomau has been interesting. I think he's come on as of late. In the last couple practices, I noticed him getting a lot more vocal. He actually called out a player last Thursday. He said that's some lazy-ish. He was like, we don't have that here. And I like when players call out the laziness. That's something that Cam Smith was saying was a problem. Guys didn't really give 110 on every play in the weight room and whatnot. So if you have a guy like Isaiah Polamalu in the back. You lose guys like Chris Hawkins, Marvell Tell. That's a spot of leadership, and having Isaiah Polamalu kind of step up in that role, I think is important for USC's defense.
Let's ask a player about someone you just talked about, John Houston. Talked to Palia Natiote, who's been playing beside John Houston and Jordan Iosefa in that Mike spot. He's been at will. You asked him I said, what's the biggest difference playing beside him? I didn't ask him about his leadership or anything. He said he's a leader. I mean, he definitely knows where everybody's got to be. He knows the playbook in and out. But I think the biggest intangible that he has is that he's a leader, and it comes out a lot when we're in the run fits or just anything that we do. He's definitely taken the leadership to a task that he's had in this offseason. He's definitely stepped up a lot. So if you want to know what the players think, there's someone who's standing beside him. He's been much more vocal this year. I think that's a really good call by you, saying on the defense side in particular, John Houston.
Yeah.
We have a Facebook question from Kobe. He says, who would you project to be the starting corners, or do you think we'll see more of a rotation this fall?
I don't think that anyone has established themselves.
Yeah.
I think that's the one of the negatives for the DBs this spring is that no one has established themselves as at least a starter on one side, and then we'll see what works out on the other side.
Yeah.
Elijah Griffin coming back, Jalen Watson being added to the mix, Kaulana Makala, adding him. I think he's a guy that can compete early. I really liked him in Hawaii. But just no one's really stepped forward and said, this is my spot. You guys go figure out the other side of the field. Isaac Taylor-Stewart or Greg Johnson, maybe they had a chance to do that. Greg Johnson's still with the non-contact jersey, so makes it a little bit more difficult. But a guy like Isaac Taylor-Stewart could have done that.
Yeah.
Didn't happen. I don't think it's the end of the world for any of those guys, but I think there's still a competition for both spots going on right now.
I would agree. We have a question from Scott on YouTube who says, what incoming summer enrollees are you most excited for? Do you think any of them could start come fall?
Summer enrollees. Let's see.
Jalen Watson again. Bring up him. He's 6 foot. He's a true 6'2" cornerback. Now, we haven't seen him play, so that's about it. He's got the size and physicality I think they want out of that cornerback spot. And then
Keenan Kristen, probably, the
He's
running back.
He's a dude.
he's thick.
He's a grown man.
As Chris said, he's a grown man out there.
Yep.
Talani Levi, was it Levi?
Tellini,
Levi? Yeah.
At the offensive line.
There's something about him. I don't know. I would go to watch. Who was the guy playing?
Jonah Tawanow.
Yeah, I saw Jonah, and then you would see him playing right next to him. But then I went back and watched some of the tape. This might work. So I don't know. There's just something I just want to see him out there in the mix. Like you said, there's not a lot of depth there. Maybe he comes in and makes a splash. Not like a guy that's going to come in and start, but he's someone I'm curious about, I would say.
Okay. I would say one last name I'll add is, which I've said several times, Drake London.
Oh, yeah. That is a given.
He's a freak athlete, and he's going to come in, and I think he's going to make plays. People are going to go, wow, why have we not heard more about this guy?
Yeah.
Even though we've talked about him a little bit on here.
Yeah, just a tad.
How about Adonis Sote? Do you see some of that speed out there?
Because the cornerback spot's still open, I'm not going to say no to that. But Kaulana Makala, he can play cornerback or safety. Dorian Hewitt, the kid that was running the defense for I can't remember which team in Texas, but there was a really good team. He was kind of under-recruited, I think. So those two guys, I think, are safety spots. And because the safety spot's still up in the air, since no one played there, but I think that you're going to have Elijah Griffin, Greg Johnson, Isaac Taylor-Stewart, and Dominic Davis, and Jalen Watson. I think it's going to be two of those five guys. So I don't know that any of the other freshmen are going to get in necessarily into that mix.
For Michael Castillo, we need to do a free Dominic Davis chant or something. Hashtag free Dominic Davis.
Hey, he looked much improved at that cornerback spot this year. Now, the size is still a question. When he was going up against guys like Michael Pittman Jr., there were times when Michael Pittman Jr. is just too big for him.
Yeah.
But he made a lot of plays over there, in one-on-ones and stuff. So I think he's a guy that could be in that mix. Now, Clancy prefers he prefers tall, lanky DBs. So he's not the ideal fit. But a guy like Max Williams isn't either. And he's a guy that's going to be, it looks like he's going to be back and ready to go in the fall. So I think he's a guy that could be there. Trey Davis is also a smaller guy. Adonis Oti is not that big either. So I think that your desires and your perfect fit, your ideal fit kind of shifts when you have to go at the end of the recruiting cycle and grab a bunch of bodies because of how many bodies you've lost in the secondary.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, agreed. We have a Facebook question from Gerald. He says, first play of the season, pass play or running play?
Ooh.
Interesting question, Gerald.
I think pass play all the way.
I always want to throw it deep on the first
Yeah,
play.
I think
Yeah.
that's always fun.
I feel like it's going to be like a slot receiver, kind of like a high percentage sort of thing. Just
Like a slant route.
That's
just
what you
something-
want to run. Or that's what you think is going to be run. That's probably what's something like that.
Yeah.
But I would prefer the deep pass.
The deep pass. We like barely saw deep passes in all of spring.
Former
but
receiver.
First play
I don't
of the
care.
season,
Throw it. Yeah.
deep pass.
Yeah.
Michael Pittman, let's go.
Yeah, I'm gonna say pass play, but something short game, vanilla.
Yeah. I don't want to see like a little swing, but I want to see like an intermediate, like a 15-yard pass or something. Just like a guy finds a zone, wide open in the middle somewhere, and just like boom, and it's just like everyone's like, yeah, look at that. Like that's the first time that's happened in like 2 years. Like a 15-yard completion.
Who catches it, Ryan?
My boy Tyler Vaughn's.
Wow, TV, still a fan.
Yeah, of course. I know you guys were like, you haven't even plugged your Family Feud podcast at all.
We
You
haven't.
guys
Technically, we
were,
haven't finished it, so that's why we
Yeah.
didn't
you guys
plug
were
it.
not really high on my boy Tyler Vaughn.
Spoiler alert: he was on stock down for shotgun.
Yeah.
That's a
You get-
fireable offense.
Wow, 5 and 7 for USC.
Do
and-
you think he was one of the top 2 receivers this spring?
Probably not.
No,
but,
that's why
but,
his
you know,
stock declined because
he's
he
a
was
gamer.
he was a top 2 receiver going into spring.
I wouldn't put him
and he
stock
wasn't.
down. At least maybe stock neutral.
There's no such thing as stock neutral,
Hey,
and
yeah,
That's your punishment.
if his stock's here and he ends here, what does that mean? What is this direction, Ryan?
It's neutral now.
Anyway, moving on.
Someone is struggling here with their directionals.
Directionals. Okay, moving on. Ryan CA323 on YouTube says, so what's the word on the special teams in kicking game? He wants to know about special teams.
Ben
Still got-
Griffiths can boom it.
Yeah.
Booming.
We see that. We didn't see a whole lot of the field goal stuff. Chase McGrath is still recovering from surgery. There wasn't as much like full team special team stuff, but Dan Weber was really impressed with the way they were covering punts because there's actually a lot more time to go down and cover the ones that are the inside the 20 sort of kind of punts instead of one guy running and trying to run and tip it. There's like 3 guys or 4 guys standing there waiting for it to come down. So that's a little bit of a different shift, but I wouldn't say there was like we didn't see any of it during the spring showcase. So I don't know. What did you guys think? Special teams.
Special teams.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that focused on in the spring.
Yeah.
Like as long as you get 11 players on there in the spring, that's the important thing.
Right.
Yeah, the positive was Ben Griffiths was kicking the crap out of the ball. It just sounds different coming off his foot. He can kick it in different directions.
Yeah.
He can kick it on the move. He can kick it high. He can kick it low. It's a weapon now. You can use him as a weapon. That's not the ideal weapon you want to be using. That's not the one you want to use as much as the punting team, but you can use it that way. The field goals, you saw Michael Brown, you saw Ali Stadhouse. I mean, there's some inconsistencies still there, but
Yeah.
you're hoping that Chase McGrath comes back and it's a battle between him and Michael Brown since you got 2 scholarship guys there. But it's you saw a bunch of different guys returning. You saw different drills and stuff. It's not something you'd be like, that was amazing.
Yeah.
It's something you see in games and go, that's different. Or, I think it was pretty much the same stuff we've seen before.
Yeah.
Just the punting was the big difference.
Yeah, it's weird. If you're out there listening, watching him punt, it's sort of like, if you're a golfer and you're like a middle handicap guy and you hit the ball pretty well, it's like, oh, that sounds all right. And then you hear like a professional like hit the ball and like the sound it makes and when they trap it, like it's like, poof, and you're like, whoa, like that's very different. Like when he kicks the ball, it's like, it's very different. It sounds different. Like, I couldn't make it sound like that coming off my foot.
What does it sound like, Ryan?
It's like, pow.
Yeah, of course. Jeff on YouTube says, any update on the long-forgotten Daniel Amonte-Bebe?
How many practices did we see him at?
I haven't even
Zero.
seen him.
No.
I saw Josh, not even Daniel.
It's very strange. It's just like it's this thing where why is he not in the transfer portal? Why is he still? I mean, it's very bizarre. We kind of addressed some of the stuff in the war room a few weeks back, but it's it's just kind of an unknown thing right now. It's just a weird deal. And USC's handled things there's been a lot of issues, right, with USC they've handled strangely. So you're not really going to give them the benefit of the doubt that this is something that they're not screwing up in some way. So I don't know. This is very strange, but we haven't seen him at all.
And, Chris Trevino did text me just now. He says, I've seen him on his scooter riding around.
Ah, very nice.
So he has been seen. There's a sighting. We have a Facebook question from Jay. He says, will we in this new system see more action from the tight ends? Will they just be used as blockers or will they actually be threats? that a D coordinator will need to take into consideration?
The spread offense, I mean, the air raid offense is not about blocking with tight ends.
No.
It's you either split them out and use them as a weapon. You're going to throw quick passes, so you're not necessarily needing an extra blocker in there. So, no, I don't think that they're going to be used just as blockers.
Yeah.
Now, which guys can be split out? Which guys can they use? I mean, the tight ends will have their hand down some. They'll be in line, but it's usually to go catch passes, not necessarily to block or to block in the run game, not necessarily just to block as a pass blocker.
What do you think? The first play of the year is like a Josh Follow, like up the seam or something.
Jasper
like,
Jasper wanted to slant pass to Devin Williams to get him going.
that'd be good. That's true, but like a Follow.
Oh, you know what really upset USC fans? Just to start, just don't think about any of the rest of the season, but just start with a tunnel screen.
That'd be good.
Lane
Talking
Kiffin
tunnel screens on tunnel
That gets
vision.
blocked, like that didn't get blocked at all, and gets tackled for a minus 3 yards or something.
I mean, do you
It'd be
think
Sark all over
USC Twitter would explode if a seam pass to tight end just happens? I feel like you're aware of USC Twitter if that happens.
I think
Not
yeah.
that a coach would do that, but I think you're very aware.
Yeah, it would go over well on social media, I would think.
Yes, Ryan. We're past 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
I think we should go into rapid fire mode. I know there are questions that I missed. Shotgun, you do a good job of finding those little ones
Those
that I
hidden
missed.
gems.
The hidden gems, yes. That's what I was
I
looking
don't know
for.
how hidden they are, but just because you miss them doesn't mean they're hidden.
Oh.
We're answering a lot of questions.
snap.
Huh?
LDR said, how many players from the 2016 recruiting class are still on the team?
I'd have to go back and look.
The
but it's
answer
not-
is 9
9.
with Pai Young, including Pai Young.
Who could maybe not be.
Yeah. So, and Grant Velez-Jones is a guy in the portal as well. Pulled up 6 of the top 8 guys rated wise are gone.
Yeah.
You have number 3 and number 4, which are Tyler Vaughns and Michael Pittman, but 6 of the top 8.
Yeah, the only 2 like consensus 5 stars are gone. Jack Jones and Wale. So
Yeah.
those 24 7 Sports composite 5 stars, they're gone.
Yeah, it's not a very good list. Let's just go through it real quick. Wole Batiku, Jack Jones, Tyler Vaughns, Michael Pittman, E.J. Price, gone. Jamel Cook, gone. Trayvon Sidney, gone. Josh Motorbebe, in the
Gone.
portal. Frank Martin II has not done anything at USC yet. Vavai Malapai, who's your first contributor after that top tier. Then you got Kerry Angeline, Connor
Gone.
Murphy, C.J. Pollard, Nathan Smith,
Retired.
Pai Young, Matt Fink now in the portal.
Gone.
Velez-Jones in the portal. Jordan Iasefa, who's been probably the biggest contributor outside the 2 wide receivers that we mentioned at the top, Liam Jimmons and Josh Fatu. So
Josh
not a
Fatu played, but he just was a
he's a JUCO guy, so he's gone. But not a ton of contributions from that class. So yeah.
Yeah, it was rough. That was a rough class.
Shotgun?
One more? Okay, I didn't know if you had anything over there.
No, I don't.
Minus the offensive scheme, has the team improved or do things just seem stagnant?
Minus the offensive scheme. No, I think there's improvement. Like we mentioned a lot of them, like where the defensive line gets a little thinner, and there, we've seen some impressive things from Marquis Stepp. The addressing the penalties. I think there's some positives along the way, and there's some, there's still a lot of questions, but certainly outside of just the offense, I think there's other good things going on.
I have a Facebook question if I can jump in there,
Sure.
Shotgun. Gerald says, didn't Fink say last season during practice if he was thinking of transferring, and he said he's a Trojan for life?
Yes, he did. I tried to find the quote somewhere, but I couldn't find it in my notes. But he did say that at some point. I don't know if it was last year or the year before. I mean, when there was the talk about potential, I think it was last fall after JT was named the starter.
Yeah, I think when JT came in, I believe it was around then.
Yeah, he said that, but he's still be a Trojan for life. He'll
He
have
made
a
it
degree.
clear he wasn't really interested in transferring at the time, but things change, and
He'll have a degree, so technically he will still be a graduate at the University of Southern California for all of his life.
True.
I got no issues when a quarterback goes there for 3 years, can graduate, and they want to go play somewhere else.
If anybody.
That's awesome. Great. It's amazing that you could do that and graduate and play. You're basically doing a full-time job with football. You're able to graduate in less than 4 years. That's impressive.
If anyone has children out there that are considering any athletics, try to enroll early and get your stuff done in 3 to 3.5 years, and then you have that opportunity. If you're not playing, or if you go to a Portland State or San Diego State or anywhere, and you say, hey, now I'm ready to go to big boy play for someone, then you make that move. You just saw USC basketball has picked up 3 transfers in the last couple of days, all from mid-major programs, similar. 2 of them were grad transfers. So definitely, if you have a child and they have an opportunity to be an early enrollee, do it.
True.
I like it.
One Blue Love says, I would answer the question by, it was a previous thing, but who would Harrell start if there was a game tomorrow? I think the answer is JT.
JT Daniels.
Yep. LDR says if Solomon Tuliaupupu is healthy, does he start?
So LDR had a couple of questions. He said, will Solo be ready for the season as well, which I think answers his first question. Until he's on the field for 2 consecutive weeks of practice, no, he will not start.
No.
Yep.
Now, when will that happen? That's the question. We don't know that he will be healthy. Until he shows that he can stay on the field for 2 weeks, I'm not going to say anything about him starting.
Harvey Hyde picked him to start. He wanted him out there.
Now you're just being
So you know.
sarcastic.
No, I'm not.
Wait, really?
He did.
What?
I'm not. He didn't want John Houston to be the starting middle linebacker. He thinks John Houston's not big enough, so he'd rather have John Houston outside, and he would love to see. He wants EA and Solomon to be the starters. He wants those big linebackers out there.
Hey, that could be a possibility. That'd be a great combination.
But he's practiced like twice.
If he ever practices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if he can be healthy.
Way too early
Now
to
you
say
want to
that.
see him healthy. You want to see every
He's got
player
that
be healthy.
potential.
Yeah.
He's got that potential, but you got to see, like Shotgun said, 2 weeks of practice in a row would be good.
To combo with the question I asked previously, but why does JT continue to evade criticism from this fan base? It's maddening, said the last style bender. I was like, has he not been to the peristyle? Because there's plenty of criticism JT Daniels on there.
There's
I
a
would
lot.
say there's more criticism JT Daniels than is warranted.
I would agree.
I think unfair at some point, yeah.
Than is warranted. I mean, I think that there are some things you can criticize, and it's perfectly fine. I think he's been over-criticized for his role in the offensive struggles last year.
Right. The offense stunk last year, and I'm not blaming JT for a lot of that.
With tackle depth depleted this spring, any update on the offensive tackle from Tennessee that was brought in for a visit? I think it was Drew Richmond. They wrote Drew Richardson, but
Yeah, I think it's Richmond. So by my calculations, it looks like USC only has 1 spot, and there's some options there. Was it Taj Griffith?
Taj Griffin?
Griffin, yeah, from the transfer from Oregon. He's a running back. Drew, you talked about the transfer from Tennessee, the offensive tackle. And then Elias Ricks is that right? Yeah, from Mater Dei, 5-star cornerback who could, like JT Daniels, reclassify and potentially be in this 2019 class. I believe USC only has 1 spot, so they couldn't take all 3. I think they could only take 1 of those, unless there's some numbers that I'm missing there. I think you most likely would want to get Ricks if you could get any of those. So I'm not sure. We haven't really heard anything. I think Drew took a visit somewhere else recently. But yeah, nothing there. But
he went to Florida State as well.
Florida State, okay, yeah. I don't know if you guys heard anything else on that, but
No, I have not heard anything as of recently. But there was also another question: any chance that SC picks up a DB from the portal? I don't think that they're bringing in so many DBs that are going to be fresh faces that I don't think they're looking for someone out of the portal, and
No.
especially with how few spots that they
if you can bring a 5-star like freshman in, like Rick's, yes, you would do that. But I don't think they're going to try to get another transfer. Like they've brought a ton of those in already.
Yeah.
James on Facebook says, why does USC wait so long to offer the top talent on the West Coast?
That's just kind of been their strategy recently. Now, it just kind of depends on the assistant coaches that are making the offers. I mean, when Kenoto Hudson was at USC, they made a lot of offers early to guys in Florida because Kenoto knew that area and he offered guys and he had that freedom to go offer them. I think their strategy has been to wait a little bit longer. Same thing with UCLA. UCLA waits even longer than USC. Yeah. But with some players, they wait a little while. Now, certain players, they go offer them. I mean, DJ Uolele's younger brother is coming out of 8th grade, and he's getting offered. He already got an offer. So some players, they go on really early. Others, they wait and want to see them how they develop as players, how they develop physically, but also how they develop as players on the field, and especially with some positions where there's strength. Places like cornerback, there's several really good, and wide receivers, there's almost always really good cornerbacks and wide receivers in Southern California.
Yeah.
And quarterbacks to an extent. Now, quarterbacks have to go on a little bit earlier, but just because of the nature of it. But you wait a little bit longer when there's a lot of guys in a position to wait and see how it kind of shakes out a little bit. Instead of offering and taking commitments early and then be like, oh, we really like that other guy better.
Yeah. Sometimes they're not sold on it, and sometimes it's just not, they don't have their ducks in a row. Like there's been a disproportionate amount of coaches on the staff that weren't really full-time recruiters. I think that's changed a little bit more now, so you might see that change more going forward too.
James also wants to know what the status is with Kendall Milton.
He is on a visit to Alabama right now.
Oh.
There you have it, James. We have a question from Tony. Stephen Carr, contributor or non-contributor?
Contributor.
That's a contributor right there.
Yeah.
James says, any good news on the Justin Flo recruiting front? I know we made his top 12 the other day, but how in the mix are we for him?
Top 12.
The fact that you're there, that means you're still in the mix.
It helps. I think USC needs to have a good season. Like you can't. I don't think a 5-7 season you're going to get a guy like Justin Flo. I think you need who's a 5-star linebacker, Southern California, one of the top-rated players in the country. I think if USC rights the ship and they win a bunch of games and they can win the Pac-12 South or something, I think you're in the mix for him. If not, I don't think they are.
LDR asked, that's something, definitely. He's a guy that's going to be a national recruit, so you're not going to be able to get him without having a good season.
Yeah.
LDR asked, can you rank the 12 head coaches in the Pac-12?
No.
That's going to be a difficult task,
Okay.
but
That's an off-season question.
Go to
Ask us later.
Pac12podcast.com, the podcast of champions. We would love to do something like that. We've done that before. So that's my I do one with David Woods, who's he covers UCLA for 24/7 Sports. So that's a Pac-12 podcast question.
I had gotten about 9 of the guys out. I hadn't got everybody on the list yet because I was still trying to remember who everyone was.
Real quick, where would you guys put Clay Helton in that list?
I've got him
In
actually
general.
right in the middle. So I don't know how many I have on here. I'm still missing some guys. I don't have David Shaw and Justin Wilcox on the list. But this is the list that I currently have. This is while I'm answering other questions answering this. But Chris Peterson, Mike Leach, Chip Kelly, Herm Edwards, Clay Helton, Mario Cristobal, Mel Tucker, Kevin Sumlin, Jonathan Smith.
Yeah.
Any vastly different things you would say there? And
You had
that's not
Leach at
including
number 1 or Peterson?
Peterson
Peterson
Leach.
one. Peterson has to be one. I think Shaw is in the top 3.
Yeah.
I think Kyle Whittingham has to be up there.
That's who I was missing.
You're missing Kyle Whittingham.
Yeah.
Clay Helton would not be in the middle for me. It would be closer to.
Well,
but
the guys that you all the two, Shaw and Whittingham, would be above him. Wilcox, probably around him. I don't know, similar.
Wilcox is close. I mean,
I would think I would give Clay Helton the advantage there just because he's won a Pac-12
It depends if you were like,
Rose Bowl.
who would you rather have coaching your team or what they've accomplished? Like Clay Helton has
That's
some
right.
accomplishments and stuff, so it depends on how you want to.
But that also answers LDR's other question: who's the best coach in the Pac-12 this year?
Chris Peterson.
That's what I would go with.
Yeah.
John on Facebook says, I watched Seau last night. Why weren't those teams better while he was here?
Wait, you watched what?
Seau.
Okay, so it's
Like-
Junior Seau?
Yeah.
was it on?
I'll-
Is it
I'll
30 for 30 or?
I actually
There is
don't
a
know.
30 for 30.
Was that what
on
it was? I haven't seen it yet, but he was. Seau was basically 8. I think I came in at 89, and that was his junior year, and he left. So him and Mark Carrier, they had some really good players on defense, and they had Todd Marinovich coming in. 88, I'm pretty sure he played 88 too. I think they were good. They were number 2 in the country at some point with Rodney Peete. They ended up losing to Notre Dame, and then they lost in the Rose Bowl, I believe, to Michigan State or something, if I'm not mistaken. But 89, they ended up winning the Rose Bowl. But there was some, it was some inconsistent play. Larry Smith wasn't the greatest coach, and I think he wasn't the greatest recruiter. And so those guys started to leave, then they kind of went down. A lot of Ted Tollner's players were successful. Larry Smith went to 3 straight Rose Bowls, the last one being 89, the last year for Junior Seau and Mark Carrier. So they could have been better. But I think they were number 2 in the country in 88, if I'm not mistaken, but lost to Notre Dame. And that was during the terrible Notre Dame streak where they couldn't really get over the top. But I don't think Larry Smith was the greatest coach in the world. That was probably the biggest issue.
Someone said Seau's teams were dysfunctional, riddled with penalties and self-inflicted wounds, and someone else said yes, it was a 30 for 30. Scott asks,
Gotcha.
I can't remember hearing as much hype about a D lineman as Drake Jackson has received in a few years. What are your expectations for him this year as a true freshman? Yes, you have not heard as much hype. Probably the most hype in recent is either Porter Gustin, if you count him as defensive lineman, or Jay Tufele coming in. And Porter did play some his freshman year, and
Jay
split times.
redshirted.
Jay redshirted. I thought Jay was the best out of that trio
Yeah.
coming in, but he didn't end up getting a chance as a freshman. So what is the expectations for Drake Jackson? I think he's going to be immediately in the mix. If he gets 4 to 5 sacks, I think you consider that a really good year.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then if he creates a turnover or two, and he's going to make a couple mistakes along there. He'll shoot the wrong gap or something and leave open a hole, and they'll get a 20 or 30-yard run. You go, why did he do that? But at the same time, you'd be like, oh, yeah, he's a true freshman.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the
He
expectation.
could be a disruptor in there. And I think
Yes.
just someone, it might not get a stat, but you're like, wow, he really changed that play. You see stuff like that, then it's certainly going to be a good thing for him.
If Christian Rector has the year we expect him to have, at least, coming off the other side. And you get him in, and he's in the mix, and Hunter Echols or Abdul Malik McClain or Elijah Winston, one of those guys steps up, and you're creating some havoc in the backfield, which they did not have last year.
Yeah.
Port Augusta went down. He's leading the Pac-12 in sacks. He led the Pac-12 until last weekend of the regular season, or
at least like a month or so after he got hurt.
Yeah,
right?
that was ridiculous.
But you didn't have that bookend. Like, you never had the other guy on the other end that was, because you were asking Jordan Iosefa to be more of a drop back guy and to play the edge guy instead of going after quarterback. Now it's going to be a little different. We had a question about how's the front seven kind of aligned now. You're just going to see more 4-down linemen than you've seen in the past. So are the pass rushers just going to be on third down? We don't really know yet until we see them in action. But you're going to guys like Hunter Echols and Abdul Malik McClain and stuff. They're going to be just flying off the edges in the pass game more often with them just coming in for passing situations. I think that position is going to kind of shift depending on down and distance, I think.
Yeah.
Kingsley on Facebook says, is there a good reason why USC has so many night games? West Coast?
Pac-12. Yeah, it's just not. That's a generic Pac-12 thing. Like they have their primary deals with ESPN and Fox and the Pac-12 network and things like that. Yeah, they've basically given the networks the opportunity to move them where they need to. It's better for the networks to have West Coast ones at night. So it just works out well because there's less competition for that. So you can argue Larry Smith would, the commissioner of the Pac-12 would say you're on a night game. There's less people on because there's no other games on, so you're going to get more eyeballs. But it's also, starting at 10:30 p.m. on the East Coast, and people are going to bed. So it's just the nature of the way that they've structured that television deal, which I think is terrible. And it's a 12-year deal, and they've just been passed by every other conference out there. So it's a problem, but it's not going to change anytime soon. And it's not USC doesn't control that. So.
People aren't going to bed at 10:30. They're going out. But they're still not watching the game.
Yes.
Because they're going to the bar then.
True.
Right.
Or older people. You never know, Shotgun.
Older people on the East Coast still go out too.
Okay, sure.
I don't know. If you guys had to guess a starting lineup for DB, what would it be? Or who would it be?
Talanoa Hufanga, Isaiah Polamau, Elijah Griffin, Greg Johnson, and Chase Williams.
That is exactly the 5 I would pick.
Yep.
As of right now. Now we'll see if someone can jump Greg Johnson or Elijah Griffin, if Elijah Griffin can come in and win that spot. Those are the questions we'll still see. If C.J. Pollard gets in the mix at the safety or at the nickel spot because they like to use a safety there, we'll see.
Yeah.
We will see indeed.
Any status on the Coliseum renovation and United Airlines backing out?
Haven't heard anything recently on that. There's like some political stuff, which I'm trying to stay away from, but with the naming and all that kind of crap. But they show the little flyovers every once in a while. You can follow like the Coliseum, like Instagram or Twitter or whatever. You can kind of see stuff. But for everything I heard, it's still on schedule. There'll be one Rams preseason game in the Coliseum, and then they're playing one in Hawaii or something. Or are they doing?
Hawaii. Yeah.
They're playing one in Hawaii. So one of the Rams home games. So there'll be only one game before USC plays Fresno State there.
But that one preseason game has given them a drop-dead deadline of when they have to be done by.
Yeah.
So this round of – is this everything will be done?
Yeah.
I think everything.
I know the cranes are gone now. So it's
really?
all the cranes are gone. So it's all just interior decorating kind of, those type of things inside rather than, the massive construction.
Yeah, they had to take out all the temporary press boxes and then finish building the tower. So I guess the structure of the tower is built. They also had to take all the concrete out and, put the new the new seats in there, and the aisles the new seats that were in there for 2018, they didn't have the aisles, the extra aisles. Now they have extra aisles. So if you see the overview picture of it, you can definitely tell that there's more aisles there. So instead of having to walk 20 seats over to get to the aisle, now it should be the most you have to do is 10. I think they've cut it in like half.
Hot take, I don't like the new seats.
Really?
I like the older seats.
See, for
the
me,
old seats were sturdy.
They were sturdy.
Tradition.
If you want to stand and walk over the seats, the old seats would be better. But there's definitely more room. Like my knees don't hit on the new seats where they would hit on the old seats. But part of the reason is because the old seats were thick and they were, these are thinner. So there's going to be people that are stepping on them. They're going to bend and fall over.
I've seen broken seats last season. Oops. So I'm just saying I don't think they're super durable.
All right.
I'm just saying.
Interesting. Are there any underclassmen that might surprise so much this season that enter the 2020 draft? Now, it's not really underclassmen. It's just guys that are 3 years removed from high school because that's the rule for the NFL. I have 2 candidates for you.
Okay.
I mean, you could stay Stephen Carr, but we haven't seen him stay healthy enough for that to happen yet. But I think the best candidates would be Jay Tufele, because he will be 3 years removed, and Austin Jackson are the 2 guys that could have standout years that are potential that are good enough for them to get to the NFL. Because I think those guys are both NFL caliber guys eventually.
Yeah, only 8 seniors on the team, I believe, right? Is that 8 right there? So it's maybe, I don't know. There might not be as much. There's always going to be attrition, but there's not any like expected attrition, I guess, as much as you would see in a normal year. So next year's recruiting could be a little interesting depending on how many people, leave. But, we'll see. There are people in the transfer portal, like those guys are gone. But only like 8 seniors. So it's not like there's going to be a whole bunch of spots opening up for sure.
We have an interesting question from Big Frank 53 Martin, who is the father of Frank Martin.
Ah, nice.
He says he wants us to tell it to him straight. He says, "Tell me what you think of little Big Frank Spring. Will he get moved back inside? Thanks. Love the show."
I think it looked fine at tackle. I mean, the question is there going to be any openings? Who's going to be the 6th guy? And the fact that Frank Martin can play inside and outside gives him a better shot at that.
Yeah.
Of being the guy that comes in. Because ideally you have a super sub who can come in, or ideally you have 10 guys and you just sub in at each position. But more likely you have a super sub and you're like, okay, well, we can move him to this position or this position. Most of the time it's anywhere but center. We can put him in at all 4 positions. That's what happens in the NFL a lot because of your roster limits, where your guy goes down in a game. And, I remember seeing the Eagles play in a game this season, and they had 3 linemen go down in the first half. So one guy got moved to 3 different spots as the game progressed. So, that's what I think Frank Martin can be this year. I didn't see a ton of his individual stuff. Chris Trevino charted all the one-on-ones. So I think he'll have, the breakdown on that later. But I think that he showed that he can play inside and outside. Now, depending on how they use him and also the guys coming back. Does Bernard Sherman, is he coming back with the team? We haven't seen him. Clayton Bradley, this is back heel. Can he be a participant? It depends on where you put those 2 guys. If they come back, if Shermer's an outside guy, then I think you can move Frank Martin back inside and he competes in one of those spots rather than on the outside.
Yeah, like we mentioned in the spring showcase, when he had to go in there, I mean, he looked fine to me. I mean, he looked good. It didn't seem like there was some huge drop-off for him going in there. We just haven't seen very much of him since he came in the class of 2016. Having a new offensive line coach, maybe that's a help for him too. But from what we've seen, yeah, he seemed to look pretty good. So they need to build that depth there for sure. And if he can be that, they usually have a versatile guy that you could move around. Toba Lobendon was out for a while. He's played different spots. And I think that'd be a good role for Frank Martin if he can get that going and get the coaches confident in him that, hey, if someone goes down, he's a guy that can go in and play.
Agreed. Shotgun, any final questions? It's 7:30 right now. We should probably wrap
We
this
could probably wrap
show
it
up.
Was JT playbook bigger at modern day? How can he believe in this offense? Yes, I think his playbook was bigger, and he can believe in this offense because he'll see it succeed.
Yeah. And it's similar to what he was running there too. So I think he's a fan.
Johnny, I wonder if this would be a breakout year for Tuipulotu and Tufele, also linebacker PG. I guess we're just going with the Polynesian crew, but yes, all 3 of those guys could have really big years.
Could you argue that J.T. Fele's breakout year was last year?
It depends on how much he performs this. If he has 20 sacks, then his breakout year was this year.
True.
I think you would just compare it
That would be a lot of
how much
sacks.
of a jump it would be. Yeah,
Okay.
it's trying to be way over top. Johnny also said, how about Britton Allen, a guy who's gotten a lot of reps, and Clancy stated he has been able to hang. I think he's a guy who's going to be in the mix for safety. I think they're going to have, the depth is building back at safety. If you can get C.J. Pollard healthy and Talanoa and Isaiah, I mean, they're all injured. That's the problem.
Yeah. He had the injury, then he was outside, they moved in. So, I mean, I think you'd like him to be a little further along after spring, but he'll be fine going in the fall. He'll do the whole summer stuff. He'll be all right.
Can this offense protect a lead in the fourth quarter? I think fans would just be happy that they had a lead in the fourth quarter after last year.
That's spice, Shotgun.
And the question becomes, can you run the ball? See, those short passes can become an extension of the run game, and you'll have certain plays where you're like, that's basically just a long handoff. So I think that's what you'll see. And, if team loads up the box or whatever against them, I think they'll still throw the ball some.
Mr. CD Proctor 84 says, "Don't leave me hanging, Shotgun. What's up with Pie? Young, shoddy."
He took the spring off to focus on academics, even though he occasionally would stop by practice. Although that was only the first week or 2, and then he never showed up for practice again. That I saw. So he's working on his academics to get back, and we'll see if he's back in the summer workouts and stuff.
Yeah, but if you over the next few weeks or something, if you heard he's going in the transfer portal, it's not. I don't think it would be a huge shock. But maybe he's going to stick around. We'll see.
I think he's got to make sure that he can graduate so he can be an immediate transfer.
Yeah.
I think that's the important thing. That's the big thing. If you graduate and then you can transfer,
You give yourself options and stuff.
yeah, because you can play right away.
Cool.
Teams don't want to take on a scholarship to have someone automatically have to sit.
Right. Yeah.
They're much more inclined to be like, oh, you can play right away? Okay, we'll bring you in.
Yep. Alrighty.
Should we wrap it up?
I think that's it for me.
Alrighty, that's gonna wrap it up. We had some breaking news today, so a good show to discuss it. Ryan, what's our schedule going forward now that spring is over?
Oh, good question. Yeah, give us your feedback too. If you'd rather, we were doing Thursdays before. If you'd rather do Thursdays over Wednesdays, we could just keep it on Wednesdays. But yeah, through the summer we'll continue to try to do this once a week. And I think once fall camp starts, we might change that. We'll probably change the schedule. We'll probably do 2 days a week again. We're still fixing out the studio. You can show.
There's another shot. Ryan always gets mad at me when I don't go to the shot.
We have a little fridge in here now. I put some more. You can't really see on the wall the. You can turn it. Yeah, the soundproofing and stuff. So we're working on it. We're working on
show
stuff.
everybody everything.
We do, Shotgun. Let us be.
No, it's not.
But yeah, we want to keep doing these. We do appreciate all. I mean, every show we get tons of questions and feedback and live calls. It's awesome. Thanks to Chris Trevino for handling that. We got Mike has been taking some pictures of us behind the scenes. Thanks for him for showing up. And
that way.
I think he took a bus and a train and a boat and a rickshaw or something, whatever those things.
Rickshaw.
Like a rickshaw to get here. But yeah, he's doing some pictures and stuff for us. But yeah, no, I think we'll keep going. But it's all about you guys. So thanks for writing in and calling in and all that stuff.
Is he going to Seattle for a Washington game or something? He's got to take a boat. Is this the
Yeah.
Vol Navy or something?
The Vol Navy, yeah, swimming some. Yeah, I don't know. It's just the way he rolls. Like that's how he gets places. Most people now you have a car, you just drive. You got to try to be creative sometimes. So Mike is creative.
Yep. Go, Mike.
Use public transportation.
Ryan,
I know that's it.
Let's not start Ryan on public transportation. I'm exiting that before it even starts.
Here we go.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
That's going to wrap it up for this episode of Tunnel Vision. Thanks so much for watching. We appreciate you guys. That's Shotgun. That's Ryan. I'm Keely. We'll see y'all next week.
See ya.